Okay guys, welcome to SSAS and MDX training sessions, and let me start with a brief about SSAS. I heard somewhere, I read some article, very interesting article about SSAS. There were a team in a company um, where the manager always torturing them. In other words, let's say they have a lot of data. Every day on daily basis or weekly basis they were getting data, lots and lots amount of data, huge data. And they have to generate report on daily basis or weekly basis, and the reports were based on aggregated data, that is group by information. So I'll give you some information. I'll take SQL Server and I'll explain you in SQL Server what the problem was and what they have done and how come this SSA is come into picture. Before going to that, as you all know, SSAS fits somewhere between the huge database and set of reports. Let's say these are your reports. Okay, you design some reports, let's assume, and let me take the pen. This is your data warehouse, and using the data warehouse you will design reports. Let's say you design some hundreds of reports. The SSAS will not come into picture until the data warehouse is huge. The data warehouse is pretty huge, and until you are facing some performance issue in your reports. Generally, you don't need it if you have 1,000 of records, 1,000 records, or 10,000 records, or 1 lakh records in your data warehouse. Okay, if your data warehouse is having very minimum data, then if you generate report pointing to the data in this data warehouse, it will fetch the data in fraction of seconds. It don't take much time to retrieve the data in your and show the data, same data in your reports. So the SSAS will come into picture only when performance is a problem. And there is one more condition where the SSAS will come into picture, that is when you have complex calculations, when you have to calculate some complex functionality and show the data in your reports, the SSAS will come into picture. There was a company, that company has to generate reports continuously. The reports are based on some high level aggregated data, top level aggregated data, let's say year-wise sales or monthly sales or quarterly sales. So for that, what they have done was every day and night they were processing the group by statements. I'll show you an example here. I'll take SQL Server where I have AdventureWorks database. I'm connecting to SQL Server. This is my AdventureWorks database. New query. Select start from fact internet sales. Let's say this is my table where I have 60,000 of records. Okay, and let's assume the same number of records are coming on daily basis. Let's say 60,000 per day. So I'm taking calculator, 60,000 into 365 after 1 year. This will be the data in your table after 1 year, right? And divided by 365, this is your per day data, into 10 years, 3650. After 10 years, this will be your data in the fact table or your transaction table. So if the data is getting accumulated continuously, okay, and if your reports that you are generating or designing needs to show high level data, that is, let's say year-wise data, how many records will be shown for this 21900 number of records? Let's say this is your transaction data. Your master data is years, and transactions is this fact internet sales, and you have 10 years of information. and let's say here you have let's say 50 crore of records, transaction records. If you generate a report to show the information year-wise sales, how many records you will get in your report? Your report should have these two fields, year and sales. How many records you will get in your report? Any answers? Okay, I think I lost the touch, and I'll give a better example. This is very required. That's why I'm explaining about this. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna create a new table. Sales is the name I'm giving. Year ID, integer. I'm having only two columns. Sales. Money. I created one simple table here. Observe it very carefully. And I'm creating one more table with the name years, year ID, integer, and year name. Let's say this is also integer. So in my master table, that is years in this case is my master table, I'm having the following records. Insert into years. 1 means 2001. Sorry. 2 means 2002. 3 means 2003. 4 5. Let's say I have 5 years of information in my master table. In the same way, what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna add the sales amount for each and every year in this table. So I'm taking sales. I'm giving for 5. I'm giving $100,000. Like that, I'm executing again and again and again. So let me execute it some 100 or 200 times so that I'll get some information into this table. Insert into sales. Select star from sales. This is a query which you can pull the data from the same table to the same table. Before doing that, let me add some records for 4 also. For 4 I have $100 so many times. And let me add 3 for the year 3. Let's say I have only $10, that to some 100 records or so. I'm executing it again and again. And for year 2, let's say $25. And for 1, $10,000. So I have some sales information in my sales table now. I'm gonna insert the duplicate records of the same again and again and again. You can see it's increasing, 76,000 records now. Like that, let me make it 10 lakh records, something around 1 million records. It's a 6 lakhs. Now it will be 1 million records. So wherever you are maintaining the transaction information is called as transaction table, and wherever you are maintaining the master information is called as master table. In this case, this is our master table and this is our transaction table. So always, if you observe, the transaction table will have huge number of records compared to the master table. Why? Because in master table you will use the ID only once, the information, and in transaction table you will use all the transaction. I'll tell you an example for the master table and the transaction table. If you go to the banking side, customer name is where we are going to hold or maintain the customer name or customer details is called as master table. The customer name will be stored only once, but his transactions will be stored again and again and again and again. If I go on withdraw some amount from the bank, then one transaction will be recorded. If I check my balance in ATM, one transaction. If I withdraw money from ATM, one transaction. So if I deposit some amount, one transaction. So whenever I make some transaction, they are not gonna make use of my name again and again and again. What they will use is the customer ID. So this customer ID made this particular transaction. Okay. Now let me take a new query window here. Select start from years. If you see this, I'll have only 5 records. And in the same case, in the same way, let me see for sales table, transaction table, you'll have more than one record. I mean you'll have more than 5 records. If you see, it will be close to 12 lakh records what I have inserted now. My question here is, if I generate a report joining these two tables and if I show the information in the report, how many records I'll get? If I want to see the year-wise sales, how many records, what is the query I have to write and how many records I'm gonna get? So you don't see the data just like you are seeing here, like you won't see the data leaf level, right? Whenever you're generating the report, everyone is interested to see the total sales of a particular year. So it will be like this. Select year name, comma, sales from two tables, that is years, inner join, sales on years dot year ID is equal to sales dot year ID. Okay. If I execute this, it will give you the information year wise. If I present the same information to the senior management, senior people in the company, I don't know what they're gonna do. They'll give you a good blast to me. Why? Because they don't want to see the detailed information. What they're gonna do with all this information here. This many number of records, they are not gonna do anything. Always they want to see the high level information. What is the sales for a particular year? That's it. They don't want when a sales occurred and what is the case. What is who made the sales and which year they made the sales, which one. They are not interested in this. So they want always high level information. Let's say I'll take sum of sales group by year name. So always this is what they're interested in. The senior management always interested in which year how much sales. So even though I have 24 or 2.4 million records or 1.2 million records, the end output is based on the master information. The master table is having only 5 records and I'll get only 5 records here. So to show these 5 records, I have to process 2.5 million or sometimes 25 million, sometimes 250 million of records to process this, to show these 5 records information or 10 records information or max 100 records information if you go by year wise. So the team, what the team has done was, they every day 12 a.m. they designed some queries like this and they moved the data into some temporary tables. Before going home, they will execute the queries and all the data was moving to some temporary tables like this. And in the morning, it's easy for them to generate report using these 5 records or 10 records or 100 records instead of querying all the millions and millions of records, right? So this is the base for the concept SSAS. This idea was very much impressed. Microsoft was impressed with this idea and they started with SSAS and SSAS concepts. This is what I read in an article. It's really a good one. I'll try to find it out and share the same article with you guys. Just go through that. And this is a fantastic idea. Seriously, if your manager is asking for a report like year-wise report or quarterly report or month-wise report, on the fly, if you execute it, it will take minutes or sometimes hours. So it will be very, very time-taking task, and it will be very disturbing to the senior management. They can't wait for hours to generate one report. So overnight, these guys were running these queries, group by queries, and push the data into some temporary tables, and when our manager asked for the report, they were taking the data from the temporary tables, which will hold only few records, like how many distinct records are there in the master table, that many records. So it was easy for them to generate the report. So if you see, I think most of you guys are having AdventureWorks database. If you see DIM product table, this is your master information. This table will have all the master information related to the product. Like if you see product ID, this belongs to adjustable race product. Okay, this is there is no Spanish name for that, there is no French name for that, and the color of this product is NA, that is not applicable. So you have all the master information. You have some 606 records here. Now, if you go to the transaction table, select start from fact internet sales. This guy is having 60,000 records. Now, what will happen if I join these two? I'll call it as A, alias name, B. On A dot, the common columns, let me have in a join. The common columns between these two are product key. Product key is equal to B dot product key. I set some relationship between these two tables so that these two are joined now. So my intention here is to see color-wise sales. Which color is performing good? Which color is having huge sales compared to others? So for that, what I have to do? I have to get color from products table, that is DIM product table, comma, B dot sales amount. This is what I'm interested in. So I get this information, but this is not aggregated information. This is a free information, right? The information how it's stored in the database, the same is shown here. So if you see the aggregated information, then only you can come to a conclusion that which color is performing well. So the aggregated functions include sum, total, count, average, and so on. In this case, I'm interested in sum of the sales amount. Group by color. So if you see, this is my information. Let me order it by sales amount. Oops, I pressed something. Sum of order by. Let me take it as descending. If you see, the black color product is performing well, and this gives some hint to the business people saying that okay, we can go for black color products rather than white color products, which is having very less sales. They can come to a conclusion by seeing this kind of information. Even though there were 60,000 records in my fact internet sales, all those 60,000 records were useless to me. Not useless in the sense that in the end report, if I provide all the 60,000 records to the business people, they will say what I'm going to do with this. Give me summarized data, give me aggregated data, give me high level information. So this is called high level information. So at the end, people are interested in high level information. No one will go for detailed information. Why? Because detailed information will hold some millions and millions, sometimes billions of records in your data warehouse. So the SSAS will come into picture just to make the report designing easy when the report requirements is summarized data, not for detailed data. If you are gonna show all the billions of records in your report, then SSAS will not make any sense. Introducing SSAS layer will not make any sense. Remember, whenever you have your requirement is dealing with high level information or aggregated information, then this is best. Now if you see, this is for color wise sales. Let me go for product name wise sales. Group by English product name. Sorry, copy it and group by English product name. Each product wise sales, which product is performing very well. Mountain 200 black 46 is the one which is having huge sales. And you are getting only 130 records. Why? Because you have only 130 distinct products available in your master table. So this is how you can go for. Now let's say you can go for customer wise. Let's see how to go for customer wise. I'm copying the same query instead of repeating the same. So the customer information is maintained in dim customer table, dim customer, this is the guy, and I'll take first name of the customer, and customer key is the one based on which I can join these two tables. I'm thinking that you have a little knowledge on SQL Server. If you have any queries or if you're not good in joins, just ping me. I can explain you that also. Customer key and group by first name. So if you see, this guy has more sales, and there are 670 different customers, and each guy's sales are listed here. So in every report, if you see, they are interested in details, not detailed, summarized data. So that is why SSAS plays a major role. And what SSAS will do is, SSAS is nothing but running bunch of group by statements. Group by means aggregate. If you want to use group by in your SQL Server, you need to add some aggregate function like sum, average, or count. So SSAS is nothing but bunch of group by statements. So these kind of queries were prepared by the team. As I told you, there was a team which was executing the queries overnight. They were running these kind of queries overnight on some billions and billions of data. By morning, when they come to the office, these data will be available in their temporary tables. As you can see, only 7 or 8 records for colors, and 130 records for products, and 670 records for customer wise. Like that, let's say they were running some hundreds of queries. So that makes their work easy. Instead of going and executing on billions of records, by morning they'll have only data in very short and simple tables which they can easily access to generate the reports, or they can generate the report whatever the business is asking for. So from there it started, the SSAS concept started, and SSAS came into picture, and now it is ruling the world. Why? Because the most important for any business guy is time. They can't wait for hours to take the decision. Nowadays, taking decision should be very quick. Why? Because the market, they may lose the grip in the market. So they want to take the decisions, and sometimes they want to take instant decisions by seeing the reports. And nowadays, all the business guys, they were generating the reports on weekly basis, and they are analyzing those reports, and they are taking the decisions on weekly basis. So for taking any such kind of decision, the most important is the data, that is summarized data, not the detailed data. So now when we start learning SSAS, what we're gonna do as part of the SSAS design is, we're gonna select what is your group by column, and what is your field column, I mean the aggregated column. So these aggregated columns will be part of our fact tables. There are two types of tables in SSAS, that is dimension tables and fact tables, and these aggregated columns will be part of our fact tables, and these group by columns will be part of our dimension tables. So when we process the cube, it will execute this kind of group by statements and store the aggregated or high level data, summarize data in your analysis services database. So what will happen if you store such kind of information in your analysis service databases? So let me delete this. Let me take a new one. Don't save. And let me take the pen. Okay, let's say you have a huge records in your data warehouse here. Okay, and here you are having reports where you are showing high level, that is summarized information. So if you point to this, every time whenever you generate the report, it has to execute the query against some billions of records to show the data in your report. Let's say I have 4 to 5 conditions in my report, that is year wise, month wise, quarter wise, and what is the other one? Let's say color wise, product wise, all this information. What if I can aggregate all those records, and if I store in some temporary database where I will get all the aggregated information that is required for this particular report, and if I can access this, Which one will be good if you consider performance? The same report, if it points to data warehouse, it has to execute on billions of records. The tables which has billions of records. The same query, the same data you can get by querying some hundreds of records here. So obviously the performance will be super good when you point to this aggregated data where you will have less number of records, and hence the performance will be very, very good. So in other words, we call this guy as SSAS. So SSAS increases the performance by understanding what is required to generate the report, and by finding out the required elements for generating the report, and it creates the aggregated data and stores the aggregated data in advance. So that's what SSAS will do. It will identify what are the required columns for your report designing and development, and it will aggregate those columns and it will store the aggregated data. When the word aggregate includes into your discussion, that means you are going to have very less number of records compared to the records number of rows that are present in your data warehouse. Now, the intelligence you have to use is here. That is, you have to, if you want to design this SSAS cube, you need to understand what is your report requirements clearly. If you need 10 columns, you have to find out how to include all those 10 columns into your SSAS. So we will discuss about all those stuff, and let's jump into SSAS concepts and what we will have as part of SSAS, and how to design SSAS cubes. So you all know, for designing SSIS solution, before going to that, MSBI has 3 tools. Let's say this is MSBI. It has 3 tools: SSIS, SSAS, and the third one is RS. Okay, so if you want to design any project, either IS project or AS project or RS project, you need to use Business Intelligence Development Studio. That is the framework to design these kind of projects. Let's say for designing .NET projects, you need Visual Studio.NET. For designing Java, there is a separate framework. For designing PHP projects, there is a separate framework. So in the same way, for designing these SSAS projects or SSIS or SSRS projects, you need Business Intelligence Development Studio, and let me show you where it resides. If you go to Start All Programs, and you will find Microsoft SQL Server, some version, either 2008, 2008 R2 or 2012, depends on what version you install, and in that you will find SQL Server Business Intelligence Development Studio. This is Windows 8, so it looks different. But if you go and see, you will find Start All Programs. In that you will find Microsoft SQL Server. There you will find SQL Server Business Intelligence Development Studio. In short, people call it as BIDS. Instead of calling with full name, people refer it as BIDS. So if you click this is the Business Intelligence Development Studio framework, where you can design the projects of your interest in ISCIS and RS. So we're not going to discuss anything about integration services projects and also reporting services projects in these sessions, and we're going to discuss about analysis services projects. So for designing any project, first thing you have to do is you have to open a new project. To open a new project, you have to go to File, New, Project. Under this, you will find Business Intelligence Projects. This is our Microsoft BI related projects. You'll find so many, like Analysis Services Projects, Import Analysis Services 2008 Database. These are the project types, templates, different templates that are available for you to make use of and to design business intelligence projects like ISAS and RS. The first 2 are for analysis services, the second 2 are for integration services, and the remaining 3 are related to reporting services projects. So as part of these training sessions, we are gonna the first 2 projects in these sessions, we're gonna cover only analysis service project. And import analysis service 2008 database is not required here, but I'll give you a brief about that, and I will explain you how to make use of this import analysis services 2008 database and where you can use it. but it's required in real time, but not so frequently you will make use of it. A couple of guys wrote me mails, written mail saying that, sir, I have this problem, what I have to do? Like, I don't have the solution file, by mistake I deleted the solution file, what I have to do? So in that case, we need to use this import analysis services 2008 database option. I'll give you a brief about that one too. So first, let's start with analysis service project. If you want to start create a new analysis service project, that means you are going to create group by information or aggregated information, right? Analysis services blindly you can say that is going to use to create aggregated information or to generate and store aggregated information to improve the performance. And so give some good name for this. I'll give it as SSAS training. This is not batch 12. I've given some junk number. So click on OK. And this is the one, the solution name. Solution means nothing but a group of files, documents, and everything which will form a project. Okay, this particular solution or project will have. I'll show you that. It will contain all the files that are related to this particular project. And this is the path where it is gonna store location. You can change it to some desktop or whatever of your wish. I'm setting it to desktop. Set the folder. Click on OK. So it'll be easy for me to show you the folder. So if you see SSAS training batch 12, a folder is created. This is the solution name. You can see with the same name the solution file is created, and in this you will find all the files that you are going to add or you already added to this solution. Everything will be added here into this folder. And if you see, the project is created, and this is called Solution Explorer, where you can explore and find all the files that are part of this particular project or solution, I can say better. And this is called Properties window, and this is called Toolbox. This toolbox is not required for SSAS. Why? Because for SSAS there is no tools provided by Microsoft, and this toolbox is mainly for SSIS and SSRS projects. And as you know, all these three kind of projects can be developed using the same framework. So this will be empty if you select SSAS project, and it will fill with integration services related tools when you select integration services project, and similarly reporting services also. So for SSAS projects, this is like junk. And this is your properties window. Whatever you select, the properties window will be changing based on the selection. For example, if I select this project, you can see, let me freeze this here. You can see this is related to project properties. If I select data sources, it will show data source properties. Data source views, it will show. So whatever the selection is, the properties will be changing on depending on the current selection. And one more important point to add, there is 2012 released in market, but people, most of the business are not interested. They don't show interest basically in 2012. Why? Because Microsoft actually after releasing, now 2008 R2 is in great boom. Up to last year it was 2008. Why? Because it needs more time for guys to test it thoroughly. Microsoft releases it to the market, and people who uses it or who practices on that will test the application, and if any problems, they will raise it to Microsoft. There is a forum to raise all the issues or missing features to the Microsoft, and Microsoft will releases the patches. So until the product is stabilized, until the product is good enough to use, business will not show interest in using that particular version. So the Microsoft 2012 will have great boom. I am gonna say that by end of 2013, it will be in great boom. And now, even some chances like in 2014 it may get great boom. Why? Because all the issues needs to be fixed, or all the missing features needs to be fixed before getting business starts using the latest version, that is 2012. So that is why let's concentrate on 2008 R2, which is having good market nowadays. And there is a difference between these two versions, but If you know this, then it will be very easy for you to understand 2012 version. So when you create a new project, you can see a lot of folders: data sources, data source views, cubes, dimensions, mining structures, roles, assemblies, and miscellaneous. So if you take an SSAS project, whatever the file you are gonna add, it will fall in either of these folders. It will fall either into data sources, or into data source views, or into cubes, or into dimensions, or into mining structures, roles, assemblies, and miscellaneous. If you see here, data sources, data source views, cubes, and dimensions are the minimum thing to create a cube. If you place some valid files into these 4 folders, then your cube is ready. That is cube or SSAS project, both are one and the same. Okay, I'll call it as cube, or even SSAS project, output solution, or cube, both are one and the same. So if you add some valid files or good files instead of junk files into these 4 folders, then the cube is ready to use. That means you created one SSAS project. And mining structures is to mine the data before using it in SSAS projects. And this is not this will not be covered as part of this training sessions as mining structures. It's a lot of algorithms we have to discuss, and which will take a lot of time. And roles is to provide security to your cube. If you create a cube, and it should not be visible to each and every guy, right? There should be some security set, and this roles is for that. And assemblies, if you want to add any assembly files which is required for the execution of some code, or if you want to provide some assembly files with this, then you can make use of this assemblies folder. And miscellaneous, while shipping this project, if you want to provide the project related docs or anything, you can add it to miscellaneous files, miscellaneous folder. So let's start adding one by one, and let's start understanding what each folder is meant for. Let's start with the data sources. Okay, if you go back to this MS Paint, I showed you here, this is SSAS project, and this SSAS project is nothing but aggregated data of your data warehouse, right? So that means you are pulling the data from the data warehouse and aggregating here and storing in your SSAS solution. So what is the first and foremost important thing to do the same? If you want to achieve this goal, what is the first and foremost required thing that you have to do to pull the data and aggregate the data and store it in your analysis services? What is the first thing you have to do? Good answers. As you people said, first of all, we need data warehouse with some data in that, and then you need connection to the data warehouse, right? If you want to get the aggregated, if you want to create aggregated data, you need to pull the data. So to pull the data, you have to set some connection from where you have to pull the data, right? So let's say this is your data warehouse where you have all the detail level information. So to pull the data from here, you need a connection string. You need a connection between this project, the project that you are going to work on, that is SSAS project, and your data warehouse. Now, you need a data source connection. You need a connection to the data source where you are having the data which you are going to use, from where you are going to get the data and use in your SSAS solution creation. So this data sources deals about the connection, physical connection to the data warehouse from where this project is going to pull the data to create aggregations. Okay, it has to pull the data from the data warehouse. So a connection string needs to be there. As I showed you here, a connection string is important, and this physical connection will be set using the data source option in your project. This is one time set. You don't need to go and modify it on daily basis. One time you set the connection, that is fine. So let me create a data source. You can see on right click, you will find the option new data source. Click on the new data source here. Next, and you can see it will be like this if you are doing it for first time. Data connection, nothing will be there. You have to provide the data connection. So to provide the data connection, you have two options here. One is create a data source based on an existing or new connection. Existing means if you have used any connection in past, that will be shown here, that is existing connection. Or new connection is this option. Or the second option is create a data source based on another project. If this solution is having another project, then you can create one more, you can make use of that. I'll show you, I'll explain you both the options. First, let me go with create a data source based on existing or new connection. So click on new. As I don't have any existing connections, I'll give the server name. Generally the server name is nothing but where you are having your data warehouse. In my case, I'm having the data warehouse in my local computer. So I will give it as localhost or simply dot. Both are one and the same. So I'll give dot, and if it is Windows authentication or SQL authentication, based on that you have to provide. This is the authentication you will set while installing the SQL Server. And if you join a new company, and if you're working for first time in this kind of project, then you don't need to worry. They will give this SQL Server information. What is the ID and password you have to use to connect. If they have any password and ID set, then they will provide that information for you. Let me go with Windows authentication, and you have to select the database. You can see all the databases that are present in my local computer are listing here. You have to point to the data warehouse or database. Before this, you have to select the provider. Provider is nothing but what kind of database engine you are connecting to. There are so many database engines: Oracle, SQL Server, Teradata, Access. You have so many, right? You can see all these are available here. Even Teradata, directory services. There are so many types of database engines, and this provider will load the required DLLs, the required libraries to connect to particular kind of data warehouse. Let's say I have a SQL Server, I have Oracle, I have a Teradata, and this is my SSAS project. And it has to connect to all the connections. Let's say it has to pull data from different databases into your solution. If you select SQL Server, then it will load all the assemblies that are required for this. If you select Oracle, then it will load all the assemblies, DLL files that are required for the connecting and retrieving the data from Oracle. In the same way for Teradata. So here we are going to deal with SQL Server. So SQL Server native client is selected, and this is the server name I have to provide, and the database from where I'm going to pull the data to create a SSAS project needs to be selected here. And my data is available in AdventureWorks DW, so select the test connection button is to test it. Click on OK and OK. The connection is set. Now click on next, and I'll explain this in a few minutes. I selected this as inherit and click on next, finish. So I created a data source here which pulls the data from the database called AdventureWorks DW, which is located in my local computer. So that means this is my local computer and the AdventureWorks DW. Now, if you want to get data from a different database engine, let's say Oracle, you can have one more data source. You can pull the data from different data sources and create a cube solution, that is SSAS solution, using the data from different data sources. It is not like you have to pull from only from SQL Server or only from a particular database. You can connect to n number of different database engines in your SSAS projects. Okay. Now I created one and I deleted new data source. If you see, this is the last one I've used, localhost AdventureWorks. So this is showing here. So whatever you used in your past, it will be showed in the existing connections. Or if you want to select the same, you can select it and click on next. Or you can use new button to connect to new different databases, which is not available in the existing connection. This is called existing connection. This button is called new connection option. So let me go with next. And here this is impersonation information. This is very important to set. This page tells about how you have to connect to your SQL server or any database engine to pull the data. What analysis service project will do? It pulls the data from your SQL server or any relational database, and it processes the data and it stores the aggregated information in your analysis server. So to do that, you have to set some connection, set some information. For example, let me take a new page. Let's say this is your computer where you have SQL server and your analysis services. Okay, and if you see here, if these two guys are present in the same system, then no problem. There will be a user called current user. In your system, there will be a current user which will be used to connect between these two. Impersonation information is set by using the current user. But what if these two are moved to different servers? Let's say you have a SQL server in one server and analysis services in another server. The current user of this system is not equal to the current user of this system. This is different current user and this is different current user, and this current user will not be able to connect to the SQL server engine. So to make this, to set the current security settings, to pull the data, to access the data, we use this impersonation information. Generally here we have 4 options. The first one is use a specific username and password. What kind of username and password we will give is Windows username and password. You know, right? Every Windows will have some username and password. If you go on join any project and which is having 10 to 15 members, each and everyone will have their Windows ID and password. Okay. If you are team lead, you will get full privilege. You will have full access to the database and you can use your ID and password. So you have to use the ID and password, Windows ID and password, which is having access to your SQL server database or your relational database from where you are pulling the data to your analysis service project. Use a service account means the service will have one account. When you install, it will have one default account. So that account will be used. You can see that account. What is that account? By going to services.msc. If you go to SQL server, here you can see it is running under local system account. So this account will be used if you select the service account. So service account is nothing but the logon as this use the service whatever it is. The account on which the service is running. This account will be used. This account will be having access to your SQL database in the same system, and it will go on access it. Use the credentials of the current user is not helpful to pull the data from your relational database. It is just helpful for different other purposes, which is not mandatory in this particular point of time, and we will discuss about it later. And inherit will inherit the properties. Inherit the properties whatever you give in SQL Server. I'll show you that how it inherits the properties. And the best option is either if you are using the SQL Server and the analysis services in the same server, go for service account. Or if you want to create a user with a special permissions, then you can go for inherit or use a specific Windows username and password. This is the best one to provide the security to your database and the cube. I'll show you how to do the same. For now, I'm taking inherit. What this inherit impersonation information will inherit, and from where it is gonna inherit the user ID and password. I'll show you that. Let's say let me connect to your analysis. Let me connect to my analysis services. I connected to my analysis services here. This is the place where I will deploy all the cubes will be deployed to. If you right click on the project database, if you go to the properties, there is an impersonation information, data source impersonation information default to, which is set to default. Now it will take the default value here. Inherit means it will take whatever the value it is here. So if you set some value here, let's say I have set some ID and password, which this is nothing but Windows ID and password. Now this test and test will be taken here. The user ID test will be inherited. Or if I set some in another information account, let's say service account, this service account will be inherited here. Whatever I set as default here, that will be inherited. This inherit means it will be taken from whatever the default value that you are gonna set at the database level. Okay, if you see here, this is your database. Okay, let me delete this guy. I deleted it and I don't have any data source here. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna deploy it. Deployment successful, and if I refresh this analysis services, you can see the database is deployed here. SSAS training batch 2012. And if you see, there will be nothing. Why? Because I have not added anything here till now, right? So that is why it is blank. If you go to the properties of this database, you can see the simple impersonation information set to default. That means some default account will be taken. If you set this account here, this account values will be taken in your SSAS solution. If you set the inherit impersonation information to inherit. Inherit in the sense it will inherit the value whatever you have given in your SQL Server Management Studio by connecting to analysis services. Now I'm gonna demonstrate you how this guy works. Let me take a new data source. Next, AdventureWorks DW. I have an user called test. Let me use the same. Click on next and finish. Now let me deploy it. Don't get confused with the words deploy and process. I will explain you that. Okay. Now if you see this, I processed and I deployed it, the data source, and the data source is available here. So whatever you add here and deploy or process, it will go and deploy to your analysis services. How can you connect and see the same? To do the same, what you have to do is when you go to SQL Server Management Studio, I'll show you how to connect to analysis services. Go to Management Studio here, and instead of database engine, by default it will be database engine. Select analysis services engine and click on connect. You can see all the databases that are present in the analysis services, or whatever the database you deploy will be available here. Now I selected this guy, impersonation information as some test account, right? And let me explain you these four options once again. You will provide some Windows ID and Windows credentials, who has access to the database here, or service account. It will be a default account, default admin service account, which will be used to run your service. That will be taken if you select the service account. Credentials of the current user is not used to impersonate. It is used to impersonate different other object properties here in the same SSA solution. And inherit, this guy will inherit the properties whatever you set the properties here. Okay. Now to demonstrate the same, let me add couple of tables to your data source here. Don't worry about this. I'll gonna explain a lot about this data source view. Fact internet sales, finish. This is just to demonstrate. We are going to spend one complete session on data source views, so don't get worry about that. Okay, now I have created a simple cube. You don't, this is just to demonstrate the impersonation information, not the complete. If you see, the process is failed. So that means the login failed for the user Rupesh test. I used an user test to set the impersonation information, that is the security information, okay, security credentials to connect to the database. But if you see the information, it failed. Why? Because this guy is not authorized to read the data from the database. And you can see the same, you can set the same, you can set the read permission for this guy by going to your database engine from where you have the databases. So go to database, and if you see the security, under security you will have logins. In that logins you need to have that test. This is not available here, right? So I have to add that login. So the login I have to add is test. So let me search for that guy. This is the user. And user mapping, I want to map him to have read access to AdventureWorks DW. I'm gonna give only read access here. So remove this, I'm gonna give read access, and already exists in the current database. Oops, it's already added now. Okay, this is the guy. Let's see what access he is having. Database reader. Okay, I have given read access to him. Now let me process the same. So this impersonation information is mainly used to set the security to your database, and if you provide access to that particular user, whatever you are using as part of the impersonation information to your, in your database security, then only he is allowed to read the data from the database. So what is the advantage of setting that impersonation information? No other user who is not having access can log in and read the data and process the queue. If the user who is not having access, if he tries to give password, if he tries to give his password and ID, it won't work. So this is one way of securing your, and if you observe, I have given only read access to this particular user. So the same user is set in my impersonation information. This guy hardly can read the data. He cannot do anything. Writing back the data to your database, nothing can be done by this guy. So this is one advantage, and this is the best option to use. Use a specific Windows username and password to read the data from your database engine, database or data warehouse to your analysis service project. So this is about data source creation. Let me remove all the stuff which I have created to explain the security credentials, that is impersonation information. Let me delete this. Okay. Now if you go back, this is how you can create a data source. And if you want to create more data sources, you can just point into the same or different databases, copy it and paste it. This is one way of adding more data sources. But in real time, you don't need more data sources. Pointing to more data sources, hardly one or two. You need to pull the data from hardly one or two different data sources. So you can copy and paste it, and you can select the different database. This is the easiest job than creating a new data source again, right? So for this, let me select the different database. So hope you understood what I'm doing here. I'm creating different data sources just by copying and pasting, which will make my work easy. And actually, to be frank, this is not so great or useful option provided by Microsoft, but I'm explaining you just because Microsoft has provided this and you have this option. So this is how you can copy and paste the data sources. Now let's discuss about creating the data source using the another project, the second option. I'm going here. Here if you see, it will list all the data sources that you have created. Let me set this in. I'm gonna create data source based on this AdventureWorks data DW data source which I have already created. Click on next, and impersonation information, let me set it to test. Click on next and finish. Now if you observe, these four are created by copying and pasting the AdventureWorks DW data source, that is this one. And this one is created depending on this by giving reference to this data warehouse AdventureWorks DW data source. What is the difference between these four and the fifth one? Can you go for a guess? What's the difference? What would be the difference between these set? Cool. Actually, this is copy and paste. These four are copy and paste. And the fifth one is reference. If you go and see, this is giving reference. If you see, the maintain a reference to the another object and the edit is disabled. But for the remaining four, if you see, the edit will be enabled, but the reference will be disabled. That means if you make changes to this, automatically this one will be changed. If you change the database or data source or any information here, this will be changed. The fifth one will be changed. Why? Because it is holding a reference to that. Whatever is the value here for the AdventureWorks DW, the same value will be taken here. In the same way, but this way, but the other one, it is copy and paste. If you want me to show an example, let's say I have so many files in this. Okay, if I copy, that is pretty big file. Let me say contact numbers. If I copy and paste it here, if I make changes to this, this will be changed. This is a separate copy. I'm copying and pasting it. This is no way related to the one that I have in my desktop folder. In this folder, I have the same file, and this one I copied and pasted in my desktop. So there is no relationship between these two once I copied it. In the same way, these first four are copy and pasted. I copied and pasted. Once it is done, there is no relationship between those set. Now, reference. If you see the reference part, this is a shortcut. Generally, you will have shortcuts or you will have a reference to the desktop, right? So, contact number shortcut. If you open this, if you make the changes, the original one will be changed. Why? Because it is a reference. It is a shortcut you have given to you in your desktop, right? I hope you guys are aware of the shortcuts you create for the files that are present in C drive, D drive, and E drive. If you make changes in your shortcuts or the reference one, it will be changed. But if you copy and paste it, and if you make changes to the pasted or newly copied file, then it will not have impact in the original file, right? So in the same way, the first four here are copy and pasted ones, and the fifth one is reference one. If you make any changes to the first one, it will not impact the remaining four, the first four, but the fifth one will have impact. If you want to see, let me set this guy to a different database. Let's say TempDB. Now onwards, the AdventureWorks DW5 will be pointing to TempDB, whereas the remaining four will be pointing to their own tables, whatever we have, or databases, whatever we have set. In the first case, it is AdventureWorks. In the second case, it is AdventureWorks LT something we set. Yeah, LT. So these references, these properties will not be changed, but the reference one property will be change. So this is about the data warehouses. Just to conclude, before concluding this session, I would like to have a couple of points. SSAS is nothing but aggregated data. It will pull the data from your SQL server or any database server, data warehouse, and aggregates and stores in your analysis services. And the data source is the physical connection between the data warehouse and your analysis services project, which will be used to pull the data from your database engine or data warehouse. And impersonation is the security credentials you set to read the data from your database engine or any data warehouse. And you have four options, that is use a specific user ID and password. You have to provide the user ID and password who is having access to your database. And the next one is service account, which will be used the service account on which the service analysis services and SQL services is running. And inherit will inherit the property whatever you set in your analysis services database. That means here, whatever the property you set here, whatever the value you set here, this will be inherited into your project. So this is about the data source creation and the use of data sources option in your analysis services. And in tomorrow's session, the complete session will be the complete session we are going to discuss about data source views, which is heart of any SSAS project. If you are going to design a good SSAS project, you have to design a good data source view. If you don't design it properly, then the cube will go for a toss. The SSAS project you are going to design will not be the best one. So don't miss the next session, and hope you will be available in time. That's it for today's session, and I'll catch you in tomorrow's session sharp at 7:30 EST. I'll send the link 15 minutes in advance. Thank you very much.